From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Across America, when you look at the movie palaces that have survived, they're all beautiful in their own way. But there's something very special and intimate about this movie palace that has landed us on a number of top 10 lists, from the BBC to the Motion Picture Association of America to Life magazine, all naming us to top 10 lists as a very special building. My name is John Bell. I'm the CEO at Tampa Theater, and I have been the CEO at Tampa Theater for 31 years.
There are so many things that make Tampa Theater unique, but one of the things that makes us incredibly unique among historic theaters is the fact that we still have our original Mighty Wurlitzer theater organ.
One of our prized assets is the Mighty Wurlitzer theater organ. It's a rare instrument now. There used to be thousands of them, but there's only a handful of them remaining in their original theaters, and this is one of them.
It is such a magical instrument, and the fact that it's still here in its original home after 90 years is incredible. You just don't see that very often.
This is one of the defining elements of Tampa Theater.
And because we still have it, of course we want to show it off as often as we can.
When people come into the Tampa Theater, and they come in for any of the films, instead of what you would normally find at the multiplex, which are advertisements on the screen ahead of time, you see the red curtain, and then 15 minutes before showtime, this Mighty Wurlitzer comes roaring to life and comes up through the stage.
Back when we opened in 1926, we were a silent movie palace, and that's why we even have the Mighty Wurlitzer. So we still like to showcase that aspect of it, and we have a guest organist who comes in and plays those silent films a few times a year.
And serenades the audience for 15 minutes with a little mini concert.
Every single night, every single film we show here, we have a volunteer organist. We'll come and do a 15 or 20 minute pre-show that kind of forms that opening act, the overture before the film.
It's a completely different experience than what you get anywhere else, and people love it. People absolutely love it. And when we do our silent films and we feature the Wurlitzer, people are blown away by what an incredible art form silent films were. Now, of course, silent films were never really silent. They always had live music accompanying them.
And I'm Lloyd Pearson. I'm the technical director here at Tampa Theater. My job is basically comprised of technical direction, production management, conservation, because we are a historic space. The building itself is a complex machine comprised of legacy systems like the Wurlitzer. We're going from 35 millimeter to digital, from analog lighting to digital lighting. One thing that will stay the same will be the Wurlitzer. It'll be a wind-driven acoustic instrument. There will be no amplifiers and no speakers. Yes, we have a little bit of electronics in it to manage the system, but we're trying to keep that no more modern than the Apollo missions. So if it was good enough to get us to the moon, it's good enough to run the Wurlitzer.
And our job is to maintain the organ, to keep it tuned, repair anything that happens to the organ during the playing. The pipes are located in rooms up on each side of this theater called chambers, and there's organ pipes in each chamber, plus on top of this particular theater, on top of the proscenium. Now these pipes require tuning. There's over 1,000 pipes here. I began my pipe organ experience in high school. I took pipe organ lessons, and as years went by, I became more and more interested in, and why would I do this? People would say, because it was fun. It's a hobby. For instance, sometimes a little piece of dirt will get caught in a part called a magnet, and then you'll have a cipher. We have to go up to the organ. We have to go up to the chamber and fix it to make it go away. And the purpose of the organ at that time was to accompany silent movie. And the actors on the silent screen, the actors with their facial expression and their body movements, the organist was kind of like playing music that would accompany what they were doing. Not to overpower the movie, but just to be part of.
My name is Darrell Stuckey. I'm one of the volunteer organists here at the Tampa Theater. It is a real privilege and a joy to play this beautiful Wurlitzer organ here. Well, I've been playing the organ for almost 66 years now. I started as a young boy and got interested in the organ when my church got one, and the sound really enthralled me. They play at one volume, and so the only way to control the volume is to shut the room off with vertical blinds, and those are controlled by the foot pedals down here.
One of the challenges of working at a building like Tampa Theater is that it had failed as a commercial enterprise. In other words, while it was built in 1926 and was very popular, so much had changed in the marketplace, and so much had changed in Tampa, so much had changed in the movie industry, that the theater was no longer viable economically. So one of the first challenges we had was to figure out how we maintain this building, and not only maintain it, but how do we make it come alive again? And so the nonprofit organization model was adopted, which means that we sort of concede the fact that we're not going to make enough money to maintain the building, but we raise the money that's necessary to meet all of our needs and all of our goals. So that model was put into place, and then the second big issue was programming. How do you program a building like this? And as beautiful as the building has some challenges. So we decided pretty early on that we would concentrate on film as our core program. And that's not to say that we don't do other things. We certainly do concerts and community events and special events and touring artists. But our bread and butter, what we do more of than anything else, is the presentation of film. And that runs the gamut. That runs the gamut from new films that are just coming out, to classic films, to even silent films that use the mighty Wurlitzer theater organ as its live accompaniment. So the challenge has been daunting, but given what this building means to Tampa, it was something that we had no choice. We just had to figure it out.
How to make a 90-year-old theater relevant to people today. And especially with a place like Tampa Theater, where we host 600 events a year. We are one of the most heavily utilized historic theaters in the nation. And the trick, I think, is to find those pockets of people who are really passionate about Tampa Theater, and they become our best advocates. One of my favorite things I get to do here at Tampa Theater is lead our balcony to backstage tours. Twice a month, we invite groups of the public in to tour the entire theater. It's about a 90-minute experience where we walk through the entire building.
In the early day, the method of sending the signal that the organist is playing at the console to the chambers was a wire that went up there. Now we have taken the wire down from that size to less than that size with the new electronic system that we have to make the organ play. pipes. That's what all this does. We're going to go up to the chambers now. The organ was invented by the ancient Greeks around 600 BC. It's an extension of the pan flute. 500 or 600 pipes, and only in this chamber. This wire right here will make the pitch go up or down. And if it's out of tune, I can move that wire up and down, and it'll bring the pipe back into tune. Now, what's in there is a little piece of metal called a reed. And if you'll let me open. And this part right here is what we're tuning. See, that's moving up and down. And that little piece of metal right there is called a reed, and that's what makes the sound. The length of the pipe will determine the pitch. These pipes here, they're called a tuba. They're 16 feet long. And they're the real low notes. That jumping up and down causes the organ to shake.
I began when I was about 12 years old. And I began because my father brought home an electronic organ for himself primarily, but I got interested and started to take lessons. It's really a thrill and play to a significant crowd. Wurlitzer Company primarily used the expression mighty Wurlitzer. There were many other manufacturers of theater pipe organs in the 1920s, and they all had slogans of one sort or another, but they were all like wonderful or mighty or magnificent.
I'm Sandy Hobbs. I'm one of the volunteer organists at Tampa Theater. I'm the only gal organist. We have several other organists that play, but I'm the only gal organist. We used to have Rosaria that played here. She's no longer with us. She played here for a long time, our silent films and so forth. I enjoy the theater pipe organ. There's just nothing like it. It's different than electronics. It's just so much fun to play. I've had people tell me that they really enjoy the organ, which I'm so glad that they do. I'll tell them that I'm one of the volunteer organists. They say, "Oh, you play at the Tampa Theater?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, I like the organ," and they'll tell me, and I like it when the organ comes up and down. They say they seem to enjoy watching the organ come up out of the pit.
It says Wurlitzer Hope Jones Unit Orchestra, and it was voiced to make one person sound like an orchestra.
I mentioned that there were about 7,000 of these organists installed. That was in the U.S. and Canada, North America, let's say. Of those 7,000, there are only 40 left today in their original homes. And this is one. It's somewhat expanded from what it was in 1926 when it was first purchased. But everything that was here in 1926 is still here. Some theaters, such as the Tampa Theater, which had lost the organ, got it back. Let's see, 1962 to 1989, this organ was not in the theater. It was sent to a church. But in 1989, it came back to the theater. It was brought back here.
Tampa Theater is important because of its architect and its place in the American movie palace genre. This theater was designed by John Eberson, who is the architect who came up with the idea of an atmospheric theater. So instead of the traditional movie palaces that were being built prior to John Eberson, those prior movie palaces looked a lot like the Paris Opera House. They were modeled after European opera houses. Well, Eberson decided instead of all the chandeliers and the gold leaf that he would go in a more sort of environmental direction, and he decided to put a sky overhead with twinkling stars and floating clouds, and it became a very popular style of movie theater. So popular, in fact, that he had a number of imitators who began designing theaters like his. But Eberson was the one who created this this genre of movie palace, the atmospheric. And so what makes it more special is that this was John Eberson's favorite theater he ever designed. We know that because we've been in touch with his family and they've confirmed it, and it's certainly not the biggest theater John Eberson ever designed, but it might be the most ornate theater John Eberson ever designed. They decorated the theater in a style that is very difficult to describe. There are probably 10 different styles of architecture represented somewhere in this building. But overall, we call it Florida Mediterranean. Every square inch of this building has something going on. There is not a single surface in the public spaces of the building where there's not something interesting happening on the wall.
We have a fantastic member base that is several hundred members strong. We have our board of directors that's 28 people in the community who love this building more than anything and dedicate their time to it.
We believe very strictly in adhering to a restoration philosophy. And that philosophy is that the restoration of this building is going to be painfully authentic. We're not going to alter anything. We're just going to replace and renew and restore. And the experience is part of what we are maintaining and restoring, is walking into this magnificent building and having an experience like people did 90 years ago. It's because of those community leaders who had the vision and the foresight to recognize that once you let a building like this go, you never get it back. It's a one-of-a-kind building, and you had one shot to save it. And so those community leaders were visionaries. They were the ones who really are the heroes of Tampa theater.
They don't make theaters like this anymore. Back in the 20s, it wasn't uncommon to have 3, 4, 5 movie palaces in a downtown area. But now, almost a century later, most cities are lucky to have one left. And Tampa is incredibly lucky to have Tampa Theater. And they were very smart to have saved it back in the 70s when we too could have faced the wrecking ball just like so many others.
This building is a gift that has been passed down through generations, and it was built by people that we never met. And we feel it's our responsibility to take care of this building, to love it and cherish it and restore it and renew it, so that at the end of the day, when we are all done, we can pass it on to generations of people who we will never know.
I'll go to the
Yeah, okay.
in our editor room.
Okay, now I can play a few of these. These are over 150 years old.
Okay.
They're by the most famous composer, American composer of the 19th century. Stephen Foster is his name.